President Trump is pardoning Michael Milken, the former junk bond king, spent years in prison for violating securities law. Today, he's a prominent philanthropist. Joining us now is Jim Stewart, the New York Times. He's also a CNBC contributor. He also wrote the best-selling book on big insider trading scandals on Wall Street in the 80s called Den of Thieves. And I haven't talked to you, I haven't pre-interviewed you, Jim, on this, but I was in the business back then. I almost thought about going to dress. So I always thought that Milken changed the world in ways for the better. I thought parking stock was not an egregious. I don't even know if at the time whether he was absolutely aware that qualified for jail time compared to Boesky or Marty Siegel or some of these true, guys carrying suitcases full of money to get inside information. I think the Journal talks about it being, going after Wall Street greed in an era that caused prosecutors to be overzealous. One of which, Giuliani, he was doing it for a reason. He wanted to become mayor, which he did, and he inspired the Love Gov to become the
Talking about Spitzer now.
Yeah, well, everybody knows the Love Gov.
Not everybody.
Inspired him to make his political hay by doing the same thing. Am I wrong that Milken was a positive for society and finance?
Well, I'm not disputing the fact that Milken did a tremendous amount on Wall Street.
Of good?
Good and bad. And I mean, I've never had any quibble with junk bonds. Junk bonds in and of themselves are fine. They're thriving today. But they were misused in that era. And I guess the point I would really stress is that the Justice Department did a very thorough investigation of this case. Judges oversaw it. I quoted Judge Kimball Wood, who sentenced him, talking about how serious these issues were. These particular crimes did create a tremendous amount of collateral damage. I don't think Milken intended that, but that's true of many white-collar crimes. And I think another important issue is that I find very troubling about this particular pardon is the whole point of having Milken go to jail, or any white-collar criminal for that matter, it's not that they're going to go out in society and, commit a violent crime or something, need to be in jail. It's the deterrent factor. It's to deter other people from doing similar things.
You would say net that the collateral damage from what Milken did is a net negative versus giving financing to I mean, how many companies could issue bonds before Milken? There were like 20 or 30 companies in the entire universe
this cosmic idea is not part of the measure in a courtroom about whether you are going to go to jail or not. Right? I mean, you could do enormous good.
There's a lot of leeway on whether someone gets jail time or not for a lot of different things. Rapists sometimes get 3 years, and other people get 10.
But now you're talking about
years.
the sentence, or you're talking about whether he was guilty? By the way, he pled guilty.
I understand that, but I'm looking at exactly what the infraction was. It wasn't insider trading; it was parking stock, so that it was not nominally known that he owned that stock. So you could build a position so that people didn't know that.
I agree; it was not insider trading, but I don't. The law is the law. It's not for us. We may not agree with the law, but the law is the sentencing for the frauds, the securities frauds, which he pleaded guilty, were what they were. The law is what it is. You can maybe disagree. You can say, oh, it's not as bad as insider trading.
How about his post-prison life? That doesn't play into.
I think it does, but I give him a great deal of credit for what he's done there. Although I also point out that he immediately went out and started violating his ban, his securities ban, when he got out of jail, doing deals for people like Ted Turner. But even putting that aside, yes, I give him credit for all of this. But let's keep in mind the reason he could do all of this is he was a multi-billionaire. All of these good works were due to the fact that he was so rich. He could afford to do all that, and good for him. He could have hoarded the money. He could have gone into seclusion.
I don't even see how that's relevant. Did you read the Journal piece? It's diametrically opposed to everything you're saying, Stewart. Everything you're saying. It's like the difference between the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. It's like different universes.
Well, wait a minute, Joe. I was doing my Milken reporting at the Journal. I did that back then, and, frankly, we had a respectful. I would report the facts in the news pages and the editorial.
He left them. They didn't leave him. No, I think the facts are different. That's the thing. I think you can talk about this the Journal is looking at this the way you are, in this sort of cosmic, what did he do for society way? And you could say that he did very good things for society. Right. And then there's a separate issue of, did he do the right thing or the wrong thing legally?
I know exactly what he did with parking stock, and I've never had a problem with that. I was there when it was happening. But by
the way, some people would...
And I also didn't like the way that the government destroyed Drexel, too, because it wasn't part of the Wall Street sort of establishment. It wasn't white shoe. It was an upstart, and they really did destroy.
I think there's a bit of a rewriting of facts going on right now.
I mean, it's true they were an upstart, and that was part of what made this a very interesting narrative. There were a lot of people who were, the status quo was threatened by a lot of what was going on then. Yeah. That, to me, does not justify the fact, and to break the law. And by the way, Drexel also.
I have a question.
Drexel admitted to all of this.
But I have actually a very different question, which is, he has this pardon. What are the implications of the pardon for him? Whenever there's a sentence about Michael Milken in the paper for history, whether there's a pardon or not, it'll still say that this happened. By the way, some people will say this whole thing was politically motivated,
right.
that Trump is the one who gave him the pardon. People will question Trump's credibility and his credibility. I'm not so sure. Like, is this a net benefit to his life?
I can't imagine his daily life is going to change one bit. I think, again, one of the things I find troubling about this in the broader context is the whole rule of law in this country is seemingly under threat at this point. I mean, this is part of a broader narrative.
All right.
We've got the Justice Department in turmoil.